Hello and welcome to Procrastination Station. Procrastination as in procrastinating and that other thing that we all do. If you can put it together, then you're my people, and if you can't, perhaps click that next button. No shade. I'm your host, Hannah, and I'm here to talk about self-sabotage in a way that invites all parts of us to come along for the journey. I'm here to lay out the setbacks and superpowers of self-sabotage in order to manage our limitations. Throughout the show, we'll discuss designing a life that works in your favor through sustainable creative practices. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoyed today's topic. Hello and welcome. I have something so special for you today. I have my friend Honey here, and we are discussing boundaries. Boundaries are something that we all have, and most of us, honestly, struggle with them from time to time. I would just really love to pick Honey's brain about just how she feels about boundaries, how she sees them, all the things. So I would love to give Honey a moment to introduce herself, her business, all of the things. Please take it away.
Thank you, Hannah. Hi, everyone. My name is Honey Abraham, also known as Ellie or Alicia. I love this question with the introducing yourself because I get to say I am a creator. Yes, I am a creator of businesses, creator of two tiny humans. I love to create art, but for professional purposes, I am a social media manager. And I also have my pet grooming business called Honeycomb Pet Care. So you could go check that out. Yeah, thank
That's
you.
amazing. My pleasure. I love how much creativity is in your life, and I'm a creative too. What type of art do you do beyond your professional life? Are you a painter?
Painting.
I'm
Yeah.
a painter too. We're gonna have to talk about that more
Yeah.
when we're not on the call.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also love creating videos. So
I love
there's
that so
that.
much. To jump right into our topic, to start us off, I would love to define what is a boundary.
When you say what is a boundary, do we want the definition for boundary or do we want my personal view on what a boundary is?
I want your personal definition.
All right, so for personal definition, before I used to feel like a boundary was, the lines that they have in the water in the swimming pool to separate the deep from the shallow. And I thought, okay, maybe. But what better resonated for me was thinking that a boundary is more like this big magical door. Sometimes when you open the door, there is a brick wall where it's just a hard stop, like that's it. And other times, if you were to open that door and explore it, you would see that it takes you to different parts of yourself. So for me, that's really what a boundary is. It's something to be explored, and other times it is a full limit that we give to others, and we either give them access or we don't.
Yeah.
How about you?
I absolutely agree with you. I feel like there's two sides to the spectrum that is boundary. There's the red hot, no touch zones. That's a boundary. I'm not going there. And then there's also, as you say, these spaces that are maybe uncomfortable, but are able to be explored, where it's like, where is the limit with this? It can maybe tolerate some, maybe within doses, maybe certain days, but not every day. And to me, this is the most challenging part about boundaries because a lot of the time when, let's say, somebody crosses a boundary and you're feeling uncomfy, you might instantly go, heck no, a red no go zone. And I'm not going there, even though it could be something that with a little bit of exposure and with a little bit of practice, it could be explored and maybe not be such a hard boundary. But I feel like a lot of us get caught in this no go. On a side note, something that came to me during editing is that building friendships, especially as an adult, is really hard. It's even harder with a culture of brick wall boundaries. I've learned throughout life that building friendships can look a lot like breaking boundaries and then building bridges between the broken boundary. If you look back at every long-term relationship you have, you can't find a single one who hasn't broken a boundary. It's not if they break them, it's how you both mend the situation afterwards, and the difference between a long-term relationship breaking a boundary and a short-term relationship doing it is in a long-term setting, there's trust that reparations can be made, and in a short-term relationship, there's no trust or attachments keeping you from cutting them off after the first indiscretion. This actually leads us really, really easily into our next topic, and I'm honestly just going to bring it up right now about boundaries being bridges. So I find that this mindset of just like, no, heck no. That is something that causes a boundary to be more like a brick wall, like you say. That is something that can really limit you from experiencing life, from getting comfortable with things that used to make you uncomfortable. It's really challenging to put into words because I feel like these softer forms of boundaries are really hard to set. I feel like sometimes people maybe hear a soft boundary and they're like, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to make her uncomfortable. So I'm going to take that as a hard one. Or
Mhm.
the other side where you just set a hard boundary. So I feel like, I don't know, do you have any ideas on how we can set soft boundaries with people and not take it so harsh?
I feel as if setting a soft boundary, I think it's really about setting standards.
Yeah.
Having that real conversation, setting your standards, saying what it is that you are comfortable with and what you're not uncomfortable with,
Hmm.
and giving persons space to just really gauge when interacting with you. Okay, maybe I can do this, and if I do this, how will it make them react, right? And if they react in a certain way, okay. That can kind of be a soft boundary that we can talk about. I feel like we're all human. We make mistakes. We interpret things differently. We've all had different experiences. So just as you said, it's very tricky to define or just know when something could be a hard or a soft boundary for someone. I love to think of it as just really getting to know the person genuinely
Hmm.
and then going from there. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
It totally makes sense. And this is why I say boundaries are like bridges because it bridges the other person to come into your world and learn more about you and understand where your boundary may be coming from. While you were explaining that, something that came to my mind about the difference between a hard and a soft boundary to
Mhm.
me would be if somebody is setting a hard boundary, it's usually paired with a reaction. So it's also like, I
Yeah.
am angry right now or I'm upset right now. I don't want those feelings to come up for you, so I'm gonna not do that anymore. But if you're just kind of like, hey, Hannah, it kind of bugs me when you're late. Please don't do that anymore. I might be like,
Mhm.
okay, she's not pissed at me, but she's not happy with me either. So we'll work on that and make it better, but also it's not like a big messy thing.
Yeah.
On a friendly side note, I was totally late recording this episode. It wasn't on purpose, but it is what it is. And I was just so grateful for Honey to let me know and be gracious with me that it wasn't ideal for her because she has little ones to account for, and this was a subtle wink to my not so smooth move.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I feel like there is a portion of setting boundaries that requires you to read other people, be that when you're having a
Mhm.
boundary set with you or when you are setting the boundary. I think just having a little bit of self-awareness and also people awareness to be able to like read the circumstance. And also understanding that even if somebody shares something with you and it doesn't seem like a big deal to you, that does not mean that there isn't a whole other half of the iceberg under the water that you don't know about that is still affecting that
Yes.
person. So I feel like honestly the biggest thing with boundaries would be to learn how to take people for their word.
I love that you say that because a couple nights ago I was listening to Red Table Talk. I don't know if you listened to that podcast. Jado was on with one of our guests and they were talking about trauma and triggers and healing your inner self child. And I think that with what you were saying in respect to just taking people's word, it's also respecting their triggers and on that person also to know their triggers and be able to properly, I don't want to say heal because healing is a journey, it's a full on going, but knowing really how to deal so they don't react to that person where they never want to do something again with you. So going back to just really giving them that space,
Yeah.
but respect on both ends and
Yes.
awareness.
Absolutely. Was there a time in your life where you felt that you didn't have boundaries? Is there any advice that you can give to little you?
Yes. The advice that I would give to little me would be that not all of your loved ones deserve to explore your boundaries. It is entirely okay for you not to explain every one of your boundaries when you're not feeling comfortable. Because when I was younger, I wouldn't say that I didn't have boundaries. I've always had boundaries. I just didn't know that they were called that at that time when I was younger. And I think that's for everyone, you know, before the term boundaries came about and it was so popular, we all had them. And I feel as if I would set a boundary with one of my exes that time in my life. I don't think that he deserved to explore all of those boundaries.
Yeah.
And I don't think that some of them I needed to fully explain during the time when he wanted me to explain them. It didn't create that safe space, and it led to a lot of misunderstanding. It led to a lot of anger, misinterpretation, just all of that.
That leads to resentment as well, and, like, that was probably neither of your intention to resent either of each other, but when there is
Yeah.
miscommunication, a lot of the time, it pits 2 people against each other.
And especially so when it's somebody that you deeply care about, right? Because then it goes to like, why aren't you understanding? Why don't you get that this is just how I'm feeling, or this is deeper? It's more than you. You shouldn't take it personal, you know? So there was a lot of that when I was younger with that specific partner. But that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah. I feel like
How
that's
about you?
it also can maybe lead you sometimes to discredit your own feelings. Like, "They don't get it, this must not be a real feeling," which
Yes,
sucks to be on that
very
side.
much.
Because it's like, if you don't get it, then maybe I'm the one that's being too much or crazy or
Yeah.
is. And like, these are not words we like to use with ourselves. So for me, when I was younger, I really did struggle to set boundaries a lot of the time. I would worry if I say no, I'll hurt their feelings. If I say that I don't like that, then maybe they'll decide that they don't like me anymore. And I would just bury it in my gut. When I was younger, I struggled a lot with depression, with anxiety, with people pleasing, all of the things. And then I started my business. And then I started to have to really look at these things in my life and analyze, like, why is it that in certain relationships end up blowing up because XYZ, whatever. We don't need to get into it. But I really did have to learn through my business that sometimes you have to just flat out say no, no explanation. Other times it does require a little bit of an explanation. And, you know, playing with your own boundaries can allow you to step outside of your comfort zone, but then also understanding your boundaries allows you to feel safe and to find safe connections. If I could give myself, little me, some advice, it would be don't be afraid to say no and don't be afraid of boundaries, because the real ones that you say no to are going to listen, they're going to understand, and they're going to do their best next time to not put you in the same position. On a side note, I would also say to little me, do not be afraid of being abandoned. If you set a boundary and someone takes that and uses it as an excuse to leave you, you're better off without them. You should be able to highlight how you feel to people in your life and come to a mutual agreement, without those same people repeating the framework of their actions that you laid out for them and either leaving you or throwing it in your face. I'd tell myself one day you'll relish in the time you have alone, because being accepted by people, especially when they're not your people, is not all that it's cut out to be. Boundaries are something that can sometimes be intuitive. Sometimes if
Hmm.
somebody crosses your boundary, it's like, okay, dude, like, why didn't you know this? Um,
Yeah, like I
and
told you.
exactly. And then other times it can be very unique and obscure to the person. Like, sometimes it could just be some random thing that happened when you were a kid that still bothers you and you're like, I don't want to feel that anymore. And it's a unique thing to you. Intuitive, like, most people know it's never funny to jump scare someone with anxiety, or to ghost randomly on a long-term relationship, or to break up with someone by text. And random, like a fear of giraffes or ladybugs, just random triggers that no one would otherwise be aware that you might have a boundary around it. I just think as people, it is very important for us to understand our partner's boundaries and our friends' boundaries, and to even sometimes just ask, has there been a time where I've crossed a line with you and you were afraid to tell me? And then maybe that opens a floodgate of conversation where you can be vulnerable together and learn about each other. Boundaries are not a scary thing, although they can be difficult to understand when you're setting them in your own life.
Yes, I love that. Little Hannah.
Little Hannah was a she was an angel. She always wanted to make people happy. She always wanted to be helpful.
I wanted to touch on when you said the people pleasing,
Yes.
because that was me for a long time. And that was it in my relationships too. Specifically, as I said, that one relationship where I think at one point I was afraid of myself and the things that I would do just to please that person. And it wasn't until something just struck me and it was like, what are you doing? You're going against yourself. It's not you, it's not who you want to be. You're not comfortable with these certain things. So why are you still doing it? And
Yeah.
then I noticed there's this deep rooted like people pleasing. And it's not just the people pleasing, but it's because I genuinely want to help, as you said. I want to be this person for you. it really sucked because then at one point, I remember having a conversation with my sister and she's like, "Do you have low self-esteem?" And I was like, "No, I don't have low self-esteem, but at the same time, I feel like I have so much love in me."
A lot of the time, that's where it comes from, is love.
Yes, yes, right? However, it can be very detrimental if that person doesn't necessarily love you the same, or maybe they do, but I don't want to say they
Don't know
weren't
how to show it the same way.
Yes, and you said vulnerability. We mentioned that people were raised differently. They have different experiences. So bringing all of that together and two people really just being vulnerable and saying, "Hey, this is me. This is you. I'm here to come together." It can be really tough.
Totally.
It's
I'm
so,
resonating with what you're saying, like, so hard right now, like
yeah, right? And so boundaries.
I feel like people pleasers are the main ones who need the boundaries.
Yes, it's very necessary because even in friendships too, I've had that people pleasing, and I would find myself doing way more for my friends than they would for me. And it's not to say that I was looking for them to do it, do anything back for me in that sense. But at the same time, it was like, are you really having the standard? A lot of my relationships I had to reflect upon and really see, okay, not necessarily is the word is this person, is it serving me? But are we in alignment?
Yes. Yes. Are our values the same? Like, are our love languages the same? And that's something we talk about in romantic relationships, but love languages count with friends too.
Mm-hmm, very much.
In terms of people pleasing and boundaries, a lot of the time you can think, I'm going to keep giving to this person, and I'm a giving, loving person, and I don't need anything in return, and I'm just going to give and give and give and give and give until eventually you come to a point where you do realize people are not necessarily giving in return. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like people pleasers a lot of the time attract people who are takers, not givers. And
Yes,
so they see she is so giving, she's so loving. I'm going to take and take and take. They don't see anything wrong with that because you've never had a boundary in place to say, I'm only going to give what I have to give. I'm never going to give more.
yes.
I think that's when people pleasing becomes a problem. It's great to be giving, but as soon
Mm-hmm.
as you're giving beyond your means, not leaving enough energy in yourself to be able to serve yourself later, it's not even necessarily is this person serving me, am I serving me?
Yes,
Sometimes it doesn't serve you to give your all to people, and that's not certain people, that's all people. You are your best friend until the day that you die.
I agree.
Maybe it's a touch morbid, but it is so
No,
true.
no, 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 no. I agree. And I also feel as if that goes in with parenting too.
Yes.
Because even for your kids, like for me, I have to set certain boundaries with my kids when it comes to me having my alone time. Or just the other day, I talked on my Instagram story about being touched out,
Yeah.
It like, mommy just needs some time. Don't touch me. You've touched me enough, and I still love you. I still care for you, but I also have to do what's best for me.
Yeah, I feel like that can be so hard as a mom because like you're the protector, you're the cuddle bug, like you
Hmm.
hugs when they're sad, and it can be really challenging to put that boundary in place because it is not their fault. They don't need
Yeah.
to know why you might be at your touch limit, but they just
Hmm.
need to know you're at your touch limit and not to touch you. And I feel like that can be challenging as a people pleaser as well. It's like, I don't want to hurt your little feelings. It's not that I don't like hugging you. It's just that I don't want to right now. And I actually go through that as well in my own relationships. I get to my touch limit as well. It can be really challenging, like romantic relationships. Sometimes you're like, oh my God, you don't want me to touch you. Did I do something wrong? And I'm like, no, like my skin just kind of feels like it's on fire right now. That is what it is. And they don't have to get it. They just have to respect it.
Yes.
And with kids, that's really challenging because they don't always get it and they don't always respect it. But
No, very demanding little things.
now I want to tack on a question here that you actually asked me to add. How do we
Hmm.
manage our boundaries or maintain our boundaries when we feel that they're being pushed?
Hmm. Maintaining the boundaries when we feel that they are being pushed. Again, going back to reflection. I have this thing that I do. I learned it in my grade 12 leadership class, and it is taking a step back mentally, physically, and just pulling yourself out from the situation and looking at it. We did a lot of practice with this because in leadership as a leader, you're going to come across plenty of different situations where you can't just act. You really have to think about before reacting and making decisions. And so a lot of my maintaining boundaries comes from me reflecting.
Yeah.
I reflect a lot. If someone is doing something that I know to myself, it's either a soft boundary, a hard boundary, it's leading up to I pull myself out and I think to myself, like, okay, why is this person doing this? Is it really their fault? Did I communicate with them? Is there something we could do in this moment? How should I react? I won't say that I always do this, but it's something that I do quite often. If it is something that is really worth, I shouldn't say worth, but if it is something that I need to address, I will just politely say, like, hey, let's have a conversation about this.
Yeah.
I'm not liking this. This is not making me feel comfortable. Again, just really thinking, is this an alignment?
Yeah.
If this person did something, or even for myself, if I maybe went over my boundary, it is just really thinking, why?
Yeah.
Am I okay with this? Is this a boundary that I should explore further? Should I open that door and take the path to wherever it leads me? Or is it more so of like, no, in this moment, we're not dealing with this. That's it.
I just feel that having a conversation with somebody, that is the best way for them to actually hear you. I
Yes.
feel like you're yelling and screaming and all these things, and people are like, okay. And it's hard to listen when you're being yelled at. And a lot of the time, when we feel our boundaries are being crossed, it leads us to yell because we're uncomfortable, or it leads us to cry because we're uncomfortable. And having that space and just stepping away, I feel like also speaks volumes. I know whenever one of my friends has been upset with me and then they went quiet on me, I felt that. That was a
Yeah.
loud silence. I do the same thing. Like if my boyfriend crosses a boundary, if he makes me mad one day, instead of like going, oh my God, you did this, I can't believe you, I just go quiet and I
Yeah.
wait until the evening and I wait until I've processed my thoughts. And I try not to go quiet longer than a day.
Mm-hmm.
To sit with that hurt, and I like to ask that hurt, what are you telling me? What can I do for you? If that means have a conversation and just let them know it hurt, I'll do it. If it means I need to tell them never do this again, sure.
Yes.
And then I feel like most of the time, especially with the people who are closest to me, if I just say, that actually kind of hurt and it made me a little uncomfortable, I can leave the ball in their court to decide whether or not to do this again, what needs to
Yes.
happen, what the boundary is. Maybe whatever it was that happened, it was like an impulse and they had to do it. And we have to find
Yeah.
a way to work together to make sure that we're both safe and comfortable with being authentic and supporting ourselves, right? On a side note, sometimes you share a boundary and someone still crosses it, not by impulse or accident, but because they truly do not care. If someone cares about you, they'll adjust specific behaviors to make sure you're comfortable in the relationship. And if you truly care about someone, you won't ask them to make adjustments beyond what's reasonable for them. Take the response you get to your boundary setting as a clear indicator of how much trust you should place in the relationship. And this isn't to say that the other person is wrong for not being able to accommodate your boundary. The reason we have boundaries is so that we can set our limits within our relationships, so then that person can either agree or disagree and then make the decision from there if this relationship is something they're willing to carry forward. The goal is to have enough self-awareness around your non-negotiable boundaries and also when the limit is reached within your relationship, so then you don't have to end up self-sabotaging your way out of the relationship, like cheating or fighting or whatever. When you're clear on your limits within your relationships, that's when you can have amicable breakups. At least hopefully if they're in tune with their limits as well. But if you break up with someone knowing that you're at your limit, that it's not something that can actually be fixed, then you're left with a lot of closure and you're never wondering why or if you could have fixed it with this person. Back to the episode.
It's definitely one of those things where you always have to just recheck and, as you said, sit with it.
Yes.
Always, I would say, goes back to your alignment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Talked a lot about alignment. In my mind, to me, that says that like there are certain people who are aligned with you who when they cross your boundary it doesn't feel detrimental, and then there's other people who cross your boundary and you're like, oh my God, no, I'm instantly in a red hot zone even if my daughter could do the same thing.
Yeah, because it's that access,
Yeah.
right? And it's whether or not that person fully understands that boundary to explore it or cross it. So I guess it kind of goes back to what I was saying before, where I used to think of it like the pool line.
Yeah.
Like if you swim, are you going to drown?
Now, we have 5 minutes left,
Yeah.
so I want to give you the floor. I can add little things in for myself after. Whatever you need to say to fill up the space. How do we develop boundaries with ourselves and with our clients with respect to overworking?
Overworking boundaries and respect to ourselves and clients. Okay, so first I am going to do the dissection of ourselves. Really get to know yourself. Know the things that you like, know the things that you're capable of, if you're able to push past certain limits, and write those things down. I would say keep an entry for yourself. A lot of times you want to think like, we'll remember these things, but sometimes you don't, but your body does,
Mm.
right? So it's great to have a journal, a document, wherever it is that you write, and just write these things down, right? Maybe what triggers you, how you feel when certain things happen, and check with that. Now, when you get into business, checking that and seeing, really applying to your true self. Does this client match with me, right? And having that conversation, not your personal conversation, but having a conversation to get to know the client a bit more outside of work or before work, before you guys decide to become partners, before you guys decide to do business together, because both of us are business owners, right? And entrepreneurs. So we go out and we're getting clients. So I would say before onboarding a client, you really get to know them so that there's that space where you are saying, okay, yeah, I understand this person, this person somewhat understands me, and then setting the standard,
Yes.
setting the expectation, having that conversation, and again, making a list. I love to organize, I love to write.
Yeah. I can tell you're a planner. And honestly, I am too, but I just find that my plans are very disorganized.
That's okay. That's okay. Even disorganization, I love to think of it when it comes to art. You can put it together in like a collage, right? So
It's a mosaic of plans.
yeah, it can come together. But yeah, so I would say with clients and maintaining and to ourselves is knowing yourself, having those conversations with clients, making sure that the clients, again, using that word aligned, you both understand the expectations and the standards. And in regards to overworking, I think that's something that we all, business owners, employees, anyone, that boundary is easily crossed sometimes. You said earlier that it's like some boundaries, your child may do it, but somebody else may not get away with it. I believe it's personal and it depends how
Yes.
you feel about it. Is that a boundary that you want to be a hard boundary? Is it soft? But in regards to making sure that you don't exhaust yourself, it's just really checking in
Yeah.
with you. Because again, since we're speaking mostly on business owners, how do you feel if you have a project to work on and this project, you're going way over? Are you comfortable going way over? Are you and the client on the same page, or are they taking advantage of you?
Yeah.
That's how I would say it's having the conversations, checking in, and making sure that everyone is on board.
I want to echo what Honey says here about getting to know yourself thoroughly first and then getting to know your client before starting a new contract together. Not just get to know your client in the form of your intake form or a portfolio, but actually speaking with them to understand their needs and where they're at with their business. A breach in boundaries in my business typically sings the same tune. I start a contract with someone for their social media before we were ready to fully automate their system. And then they're frustrated at me for telling them we need to experiment to find the right system so that we know what to automate. To avoid this type of conflict, I have a more thorough onboarding process, and if I find out through this process that they're not quite at a point where they would benefit from my services, I hit pause on moving forward and tell them to loop back with me when they're ready. I also have some products that can help them get ready, but they're more of a digital product, learn yourself type, and then they can come back to me for my one-on-one work. Having a significant onboarding process allows you to set the right expectations with your customer. It also allows them the opportunity to voice what they expect. And with respect to overworking, this breach in boundaries is where the overworking can come from, at least for me. Before I developed my onboarding process, I'd take on work for clients that was monumentally larger than what I signed up for. This was because I didn't have the right benchmarks in place to gauge where they're at in their business and what it was exactly that I would be doing for them. This means I've lost a lot of earning potential by way of wasting my time with contracts that were not paying me for the skills that I was giving them. This means doing graphic design for like $200. I'm sorry, but nobody else on the market charges that low. And I'll also tell you that when you don't have these boundaries of what you're willing to do and what you're not willing to do within your business, you end up taking on these really quick contracts that don't actually serve you in the long run because they take just as much energy as the more premium contracts, and they are spending all of your energy giving you no reward to incentivize you to continue working at the capacity that you're working. I really, really believe that having boundaries within your business, between you and your clients, and also between you and the work is just so, so important. Let's get back to the episode. Checking in with your gut instinct as well as with them, and as well with just the circumstance at hand. I really love that. I'm really sad to say I do have to let you go, but I would love to ask you before we do leave, honey, where can people find you?
Yes, so you can find me on Instagram at Rude Bunny Honey. That is my main account for social media management and interacting with me, seeing everything that I do that's in my life.
She's a really cool page. There's lots of aesthetic stuff, but then also some real life stuff mixed in. It's really great. I highly recommend checking it out. And
Yeah.
I will also let the audience know that we have a live stream coming out together on
Yeah.
Instagram at some point. We're going to go even deeper in on this topic here, but we're going to make it more of a boundaries with clients side of things. So this was a lot
Mhm.
of personal chat. We're going to make it a lot more business chat when we do it online. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you, Hannah. It was a pleasure being on here with you.
I really enjoyed this chat. I think that we could go even deeper in on it. I think we could go deeper in on any topic. I really like talking to you. We could definitely have lots of great chats over time.
And next time, both of us can have coffee together.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And we're both going to be on time, and we're both going to be ready and prepared, and it's going to be smooth and perfect.
Yes. All right, Hannah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with me, and if you enjoyed today's topic, now is a great moment to subscribe. If you have any feedback about today's topic, please reach out to my social channels. I help creative entrepreneurs market their creations in a way that feels authentic. I have a self-study marketing program that covers basic and advanced marketing concepts with 9 modules and activity sheets. I also sell content creation templates to help you manage your social media with unlimited content creation ideas. And I also offer one-on-one marketing consulting services. Check out my socials and my website to learn more. If you're interested in working with me, please reach out via email. So that's social media if you're reaching out for my podcast, and email if you're reaching out for business. All relevant contact links are in the description, and thanks again for listening. Cheers for now. That was pretty good.